At the top of today's video, before we get into the new GBR rankings, I just wanted to say a huge shout out to everybody who checked out the Patreon. I did not expect this much attention and support this early. And a special shout out to Tyree, Bob Brown Bear, Lost Goonie, The Greaser, Jim, Arcane, and Wanky. Y'all basically shocked me. So yes, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Left me speechless, which is rare. So yeah, let's get into it. New GBR tier list. It's been like a year since I did this, and I realized that basically nowadays you're not really using regular tier 3s for GBR. So while this list is not exhaustive of every single character that you can use for GBR, this list is very encapsulating of like the best characters for GBR and the ones you should be aiming to build for GBR. And I'll make a couple of notes for characters that are particularly good at level 80, but in general, the ones that are the best at tier 4, like whatever we're going to put in S rank, it's kind of the same for tier 4 and for level 80. There are again a couple of exceptions, but otherwise the list is fairly straightforward in that sense. We're going to cover support first. There's actually so many supports now in Marvel Future Fight, it's pretty crazy. And for GBR, it's important to note you can't use tier 2 support. So there's no Nick Fury, there's no Dazzler, there's no Phil Coulson yet, right? We'll get those cats eventually. But in the meantime, you do have to look at this list and, choose carefully. I did try to rank these lists of supports in order of their value. So keep that in mind. I'm not just throwing these guys out here randomly. She-Hulk is kind of awkward. She's not technically a support. She's just she's a very good leadership for GBR because she scales your damage rather than scaling your attack, which is very, very powerful for characters that have very high attack but don't have any access to increased damage. So, for example, She-Hulk will not be very good as a lead for Iron Man because he has a way of scaling his damage to boss types, which Dormammu is, with his artifact, right? But if you have another character with just insane attack but no damage scaling, and I can't think of somebody right now, I don't want to say someone who's wrong, but anywho, if you do have someone like that, maybe Doctor Strange is like that, I'm not 100% sure. But if you do, then the scaling is very, very good in that sense. I think maybe Venom is an example of that, although Venom is not the be-all and end-all for GBR farming. But yeah, we also have Wong here, whenever I can find him. And then we're just going to wrap out the list of supports with a bunch of niche supports. So you get the Spider-Verse niche support, you get the Symbiote niche, and the Symbiote and Sinister, the S&S niche. You got the Guardians niche, the Inhumans niche. I'm not even going to talk about, don't even bring up Rocket. Rocket's a terrible support. But yeah, these are all of the sort of best supports. This is not an exhaustive list of all of the supports, but these are the best supports for GBR these days. And then just one amazing leadership in the sense of She-Hulk, who actually can also be a support. If you have the artifact, if you have the Gamma artifact and you pair her with Hulk, yes, she is technically a support. So that's the first list here. Second tier up from this, I guess, is called versus weak typing. So this essentially is the lowest tier of character in my opinion, and these are characters who I would say you should only probably use if they have advantageous typing. So for example, Shadow Shell, not a terrible character, but she's not going to do very well. She's not going to be very fast doing GBR when it's when it's combat day and she has disadvantage. She's not going to do so well when it's speed day and she has no advantage. She's not going to do well in Universal Day when there's no advantage. But she'll do pretty well. She'll be pretty fast, pretty competitive when it's Blast Day, like today, right now, when I'm recording this video. Because she's a speed type, so she has advantage. Now, obviously, you have to build your type enhancement for these characters. If your type enhancement is at rank 0 or rank 1, you're not really going to notice it. But if your type enhancement is rank 4, rank 5, rank 6, you're getting anywhere from, 40, I think, to 60% increased damage, which is massive. Remember, increased damage is scaling your damage at the end rather than attack, so it's very, very strong. Anyways, the characters I'm listing here are not necessarily bad by any means. They're not bad. They're just not nearly as fast, and you can tell that they're not nearly as fast because when you use them on days that are not advantageous, they're kind of, they're chugging along at their speed, and these characters have tremendous value in other game modes, so it's not a surprise here, right? Like you see out of this list, how many PvP heavyweights do we have? Wolverine 1, Hulk 2, Carnage 3, Atom 4, Spider-Man 5. So you have 5 insane PvP heavyweights, and then Gwen and Black Widow are not terrible for PvP. Even Shadow Shell's not terrible for PvP, with the right team, right? So yeah, these characters are by no means bad. It's just that in the realm of GBR, you can go a lot faster than these characters. And I did try to rank them in terms of their speed, by the way. I also take into consideration, the two things I take into consideration for GBR are consistent damage, which I convert to speed. And that means on every single day, right? Not just one day when you have advantage. So speed, which is determined by damage, and then survivability. Survivability doesn't account for that much. It's only maybe like 10-15% of the ranking, but survivability does come into play, and it will matter a lot more when we get up higher and the damage is very, very high and they're all sort of equal in terms of speed. The survivability does come into play because you can die in GBR, and although people don't care as much anymore about it, it was crazy when Hulk came out and he could solo GBR and never die. Right? Like, that was a pretty big deal at the time because it was very, very rare. Now, into the B tier. For B tier and A tier, it's sort of just they're good at GBR. I'm not going to say that they're the best at GBR, but they are good at GBR. They can clear fast on their advantage typing day, and then they can also clear with, you know, relative ease on the other days. They can still struggle at times, but overall, they're still good. Now here for Namor, although I think Namor is actually a little bit slower than both Black Panther and Venom in terms of speed, and he actually has less survivability than Venom. The thing that boosts Namor's score and his value is the ability to buff. So Namor's buffs that he applies actually apply to the whole team. So if you are playing with other players in GBR, if you're not playing solo, and if you're playing with other players who have good damage, then you will actually go even faster because of Namor. So if you're, this doesn't apply if you're carrying two weak players and you're using Namor, then it doesn't really apply. But if you are playing with sort of two equal damage characters, right, equal to your damage, then you will see a notable speed increase, and he'll actually be faster than if you were using Black Panther or Cable or Venom or any of these other characters in the B tier. So Namor does have sort of a unique tag available only to him. Some people would say that that puts him above the rest because he can buff allies on the team, whereas other people can't. Some people would say that even makes him, you know, deserves him the A tier ranking. I'm not going to go that far. I don't want to confuse people a lot, but just know that Namor has buffs. So if you play with people, I don't know what your situation is for GBR, but if you play with people that are pretty good and can do some damage, over 10%, I would say, if they can do at least 10% of the damage in like 2, 3, 4 minutes, then using Namor could actually be faster than using some of these other characters. But yeah, that is how the list looks like for B tier. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate from Moon Knight fans, but I did a lot of research on this. And although I don't have all of these characters tier 4, I'm pretty confident. I'm not 100% confident, but I'm pretty confident in these rankings. I did research. I looked at what other accounts had seen. Big shout out to Puppet Titan. I think their content is underrated. It's very good, and there's a lot of comparisons to characters. And yeah, Moon Knight is slow in all of these comparisons. And not only is he slow, but he has the lowest survivability. So that is kind of like two X's. Now this can be skewed. I'm not here to attack anybody, but I'm just going to say this. Moon Knight's value can be skewed by players who have high-end builds, like brilliant this or brilliant that 6-star artifact. Those players might say, oh, well, my Moon Knight is much faster than all these guys. Yes, your Moon Knight is, yes, but the average Moon Knight is not, and he still has survivability issues regardless. So yeah, that's how the B tier shakes out. Again, they're not bad for GBR. There are just better options. That's all it is. Now we get to the A tier and the S tier. In my opinion, the A tier and the S tier, I called it S+. You'll see why. But for the A tier and the S tier, they're basically like amazing for GBR. Amazing, just like insanely good. And I wouldn't say I would build a character in the A tier just for GBR, but I would say if you don't have anyone for GBR at tier 4 and you care about doing GBR fast and consistently, you should look exclusively to the A and S+ tier. And actually, I would just look at the S+ tier, but you know, it is what it is, right? So we're going to start off with Thor. This one, I'm kind of undervaluing Thor here. I get a lot of people telling me that I overvalue Thor, so I'm going to put him at the top of A tier. He is universal, so he does have the advantage of, you know, being able to deal consistent damage every single day. And he loses a little bit of damage on Universal Day, obviously, but otherwise, I think he's very, very strong. But he can be a little bit clunky to play. Absolutely, he can be a little bit clunky to play. Blue Dragon. Here's the thing. Blue Dragon can absolutely be faster than Thor and is faster than Thor on her advantage day, on combat day. But on speed day, she's going to be slower than Thor. On Universal Day, on Blast Day, they're probably going to be about equal. So it really depends. It really depends. They can kind of flip-flop. I'm going to flip-flop them like this. I give Thor the advantage because of typing, but it is what it is. Miles Morales, insanely good for GBR. Shockingly good for GBR, pun intended. He's so strong for GBR. I really cannot express this. It's bonkers how good he is for GBR. Also very good at level 80 for GBR. One of the few that's very good. Other level 80s that are very good for GBR, Black Panther, Venom. Namor still has his heals, so he's not bad at all there. Ant-Man was good at level 80 for GBR from my recollection. I'm not sure about anybody else at 80 before tier 4. I think Cap was decent at 80, and Luna might have been decent as well at 80 before tier 4 for GBR. But yeah, it's difficult for some of these typings to be good before tier 4 at GBR because of the way that their scaling works in their tier 4 bump. Odin, I couldn't find a lot of information about Odin, to be honest with you. I don't have him tier 4. From what I found, people weren't that impressed with him in GBR, but I still think he's a notch above the B tier because of the, damaging tier 4 ability and how tanky he is and how, he's got a self-buffing lead with defensive properties. So very, very strong. He basically cannot get interrupted during any phase of Dormammu. Like, that shit where he hits you with the fear and you lose control of your character. That shit doesn't happen to Odin. So yeah, pretty solid there. I was actually surprised in my research that Star-Lord is actually on par, more or less, with Iron Man. Now, I think this is going to depend on your build for these characters, so it can absolutely flip-flop. I personally like Iron Man over Star-Lord because of that crazy burst at the end where he just one-shots the last 10 bars because of his uniform. But that, of course, matters, again, to your build if you have the artifact. Without the artifact, I think easily Star-Lord takes the lead. With the artifact, I think it's a little bit more, 50-50. Also at tier 380, I think Iron Man still takes it because of the uniform passive effect. But again, that depends on your build. Rounding out the A tier, we have Storm. Very, very strong. Sort of a forgotten character at this point, but still very good. And then we have Magneto. So that basically leaves us with the S+ tier. And no surprise here, we have some of the heavyweights. Let's just get this out of the way. Jean is the best. Jean is the best character in the game for GBR, period. Obviously, you need a PvE build. You need a rage build to make this true. Obviously, if you don't have a rage build on her, she's going to drop probably somewhere around here, maybe even further if you have a PvP build on her. But if you don't have a PvP build, if you have a PvE build, then yeah, she's the queen. No questions there. I would put Thanos second. Now, the reason why I put Thanos second and why I put Black Bolt third is the same reason why Thor is here and Odin is here. Universal typing does not have this advantage. That's a huge bonus for GBR. Your damage is so consistent, whatever it is, 6 days out of the week, you deal, maximum damage 6 out of the 7 days. No other typing can say that, right? No other typing can say that. So that's huge. The reason why I put Thanos a little bit ahead of Black Bolt, although Thanos can be more irritating to play, etc., is his survivability. Thanos can't die in GBR. Jean can't die in GBR, like Hulk. Black Bolt can die in GBR. His survivability is actually not that good, despite having the V-pad and despite having the fat heal on the 5. It's not that good. He's still very strong. He's another character who's insanely good at tier 380. Also, Thanos, very good at tier 380 for GBR. Jean, not so much. I think she's not bad for GBR at tier 380. Like, she's still very, very good. It's just that her tier 4 makes her so much faster because it gives her access to accumulation. And then we round out the list with Doctor Strange and Sharon Rogers. This one, again, I think can flip-flop. I mean, we all know Doctor Strange has been insane for GBR since Multiverse of Madness uniform, so there's no surprise there. But I think it also matters what your build is. I think for some of you out there with like a Brilliant Energy or a Brilliant Destruction on Sharon, I think she's going to be faster. Sharon also has the ability of being one of the fastest characters for GBR, period, if you're going for like a speed run. So some players will consider that to be the deciding factor. They'll say, oh, well, Alex, this list doesn't take into consideration the fact that if I play with my 2 friends and we're all using Sharon, we can one-shot Dormammu and we can finish the fight in 30 seconds. So that means that Sharon is actually faster than everybody else. Yeah, that's true, but let's be real. 99.9% of players are not playing the game that way. They don't have friends who can log in at the exact time to play GBR with them and then put the exact same team and then coordinate like you're playing on comms, in a competitive FPS like Valorant or CS, whatever. Be like, okay, pop your tier 3. Okay, I'm popping my tier 3. Like cascading like singing in a canon, right? That just doesn't happen for the majority of players. So because of that, I'm just going to rank her in more of an average state rather than the outlier of absolute best build. But keep in mind, Sharon is very strong at tier 380 for GBR. Her along with Doctor Strange, you know, basically almost every character here in the S tier is also amazing before tier 4 for GBR, although they do gain a lot from tier 4. So that's how the list shakes out. Again, I'm not 100% confident in this list. I'm like 95% confident in this list. So hit me up in the comments down below if you have proof, if you have video evidence of how these rankings should be adjusted, and I can adjust them on the fly and release updates to social media, Discord, Twitter, Patreon, etc. Hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.